Welcome back to the program this nice sunny Saturday afternoon. I'm Stirling Fox, joined in studio by Futurist Nikolas Badminton. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the program.
Thanks very much for having me. Always a pleasure.
It's good to have you back. We haven't talked in a long time. I know you're a regular visitor with Linda Steele, and it's nice to finally have you pop in on our show.
Happy to be here.
Interesting. Nick just told me during the break that you hadn't heard the announcement from Husky Energy that they want to sell the whole shooting match for $800 and some odd million. You spoke at a fuel providers conference a couple of years ago, and you actually predicted this, and you made everybody in the room mad at you.
Well, you know, these are family businesses that they've been around for generations and generations. They want their kids to take over the business. That's never going to happen now. You know, we're careering towards a world that will not be burning oil for transportation. Mm-hmm. So this is inevitable, and these are just bellwethers to much larger changes. But what, 500 gas stations? Yeah, that's huge. I mean, where are the gas stations going in Vancouver? I mean, there's going to be like one gas station in Vancouver within like 3 or 5 years.
Only because the real estate that provides the gas station is simply too expensive to waste on a service station. Why not put a condo up, as has been the case we've seen a few of them in the downtown core just vanish in the last year, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And electric vehicles. I drove here today in my electric vehicle. It's going to change the game.
Does it surprise you, though, and this was in the paper just the other morning, about electric vehicle sales? While the governments are certainly enthusiastically promoting them, to a lesser extent now in Ontario with the newer government taking away some of the rebate activity, but nonetheless, governments coast to coast are being very enthusiastic proponents.
Yeah.
Consumers are not following along in the kinds of numbers governments were expecting us to so far.
You know what? It's really interesting, the amount of people that walk up to me when I'm plugging my car in, whether it's in a parkade like I just did just now, or whether it's down at a beach and I can plug in there. The number of people that come up and ask me about it, and their interest is piqued, and these are older people with money that can spend the money on these vehicles. It's astounding, and it's not going to really. People aren't going to switch in droves like people would love them to, right? Or obviously all companies don't want them to. But by 2030, the world's going to look completely different. And the electrification of personal transportation, even ownership of vehicles, is going to change completely.
I think the biggie for us here in Canada, Nick, is because we are so few in terms of population in the second largest country on earth. Distance and the ability for the vehicle to handle distance is critical for Canadians, and they're just not there yet.
Yeah, it's really tough. I surveyed a route from here in Vancouver to Toronto, and there's
where you could fill up all the way across.
Yeah, you hit a pretty dark spot just out of Calgary. Between Calgary and Thunder Bay, it's tough times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you pretty much, it's few and far between. The best way to do it would be to drop down into the States, where you've got a lot more charges actually on the way. So yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done. I just heard in Ontario that they've been ripping out fast chargers and level 2 charging stations because they haven't been used. It's like this isn't how you get people to change. Right,
you don't take away their technology before they bought the new vehicle.
Yeah, you know, that's actually a hook to buy the technology, right? Sure. So I don't know. I took the leap this year into buying an electric vehicle.
What kind did you get?
I bought a Chevrolet Bolt.
Okay, yeah.
It's very fast. It's very fun. It's just amazing. I've driven like 4,000 kilometers since I bought it in June, and I've spent almost no money on fuel.
Right.
And had no impact on the environment. And some people will say, oh, the batteries, it's bad to make the batteries. Yeah. But then I don't burn fuel for the next 30 years. And in fact, the average age of a car is about 12 to 15 years. The average age of an electric vehicle like mine will be like 30, 35 years.
Interesting. Okay. Just because of wear and tear factors.
Yeah. Right? And there's actually a vehicle that's used in a lot of a concierge kind of travel down in California. It's a Tesla Model S.
Right.
They just hit 500,000 miles, and it'll be like one of the first million mile cars in the world.
I have a friend who just got a new Tesla, and the first thing she says, and everybody who she takes for a ride for, it's really fast.
Yeah, they're all really fast. My car is so fast, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you, and I promoted the fact, so we better get to it here. Nikolas, on his website, nikolasbadminton.com, has created a piece called 5 Predictions and Questions for 2019. And you did this just before Christmas. So do you mind if I read the prediction and you ask the question that the prediction basically creates?
Absolutely.
So here's prediction number 1, according to Nick Badminton. There will be increasing tension between technology giants and governments.
Yeah, absolutely. So the big question here is, will the continually swinging pendulum of technology mogul adulation, so our love of like Facebook and Amazon and Google or whoever, versus warning shots against political aspirations continue? Explain. Right. So what we've got is we've got Amazon that have just recently announced HQ2, which is their second large HQ outside of Seattle in America.
Right.
Where was it going to be? It was a big crapshoot. Like
Vancouver got involved. Yeah. Toronto got involved.
Vancouver didn't do a very good job of it.
No.
But do you know what? We've got enough business from Amazon coming in. But who won? Long Island and just outside of Washington, D.C., in an area called Crystal City.
Right.
Jeff Bezos wants to be close to government in the US. People like Mark Zuckerberg, and him going through all these, these Senate hearings, that was basically the Senate telling Mark Zuckerberg to back off from political aspirations. So you'll have people like Larry Page and the founders from behind Google and YouTube and whatever. All these people have got a huge amount of sway, a huge amount of money. And what does that normally do in an American society?
Right.
It drives those people towards political aspirations, either as funders or people to actually be in politics, right? Jeff Bezos becoming president of the USA.
Well, we would have said, and most people, yeah, right, sure. We would have said the same thing about Donald Trump 3 years ago, wouldn't we? Yeah, right, sure.
Yeah.
What about Zuckerberg? You think a guy like that has political ambitions? I mean, he's only worth how many gabillions of dollars?
Yeah, he does have political aspirations. Obviously, he's got the Zuckerberg Chan Foundation. He's pledged to give away, most of his money. The influence he's got, he's going through some really tough times. He's still a really young guy. In 30 years' time, when he's 64, 65, do I think that he'd be in the political arena? I think he'd be in a good position to be that way if he continually works at hustling the way that he's hustling.
Which is more dangerous? A big financier like a Bezos or a Zuckerberg going for a political assignment, or being the figure, the shadow behind whoever that is with the bags and bags of money? Because, of course, in America, he or she who has the most money wins.
It's about ego, right? People that want to be president, there's an element of that which is ego,
just a little,
ego and stage. I actually think that ego and stage plays a huge role in a tech mogul's sort of lifetime.
Okay, let's go to prediction number 2. This is interesting. Smart cities will lead to citizen assimilation. Acceleration will continue. And city administrations are not ready.
Yeah, they're not. And how will we create collaborative and mutually beneficial approaches towards ownership of our cities and the data that we generate within them, and the ability to build out the roadmap for communities for our future? So this is the idea that technology is going to come into our roads, into our buildings, into the schools, into the malls and whatever. And we are going to be parts of the product of that city. And by product, I mean that our consumer behaviors, our moods, the people that we talk to, the networks that are generated in real life,
right,
offline, are actually going to be sucked into an online world, and that is going to be valuable data. There's already been a lot of discussion around this data and ownership in Toronto with the waterfront development that's happening there, and I go to Toronto a lot and I talk about this a lot as well.
Right. And we're also seeing a lot of facial recognition technology being experimented with around the world, where shoppers can be tracked as they go through a mall, let alone a store, and their moods can be tracked even as they find something that excites them. The heartbeat increases, and Walmart is experimenting with a shopping cart that has something built into the handle that can measure your heartbeat.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, this is kind of like...
I don't know whether it's amazing or insidious.
Well, it's that Orwellian world of tracking everything that we do, and it's like, trust us, you crossing the threshold of this shop means that you've signed off on the terms and conditions of usage.
Right.
We own your face. We own your biometrics. We own, the networks that you follow in the store. I mean, over the last few years, I've actually written about a number of things like swarm technology that could track your IMSI numbers and the chips in your phone around shopping centers. That got shut down in the States. It was a little bit too creepy. But facial recognition technology, it's security. We need this and whatever. But you still sign away all of your data. And this is being manifested in something called the social credit system in China as well, which is everyone gets a number, everyone gets a score, and it's all about you being a good citizen. If you drop down the scale, you lose rights to be able to be out on the streets at night, be able to travel, all sorts of things. It's like a Black Mirror episode.
So if indeed city administrations aren't ready for to be a smart city, because Vancouver's been bragging about this forever and a day, and is likely as not ready as any other city in North America. So what does cities need to do, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, they need to experiment, and they need to learn, and they need to scale up their teams. They need to have larger cybersecurity forces, people that do data science. They need to work out how the ethics around data ownership and usage of data works for the citizen. That's the big key in this entire debate around smart cities. And they need to do this at scale. And they're just not there today. So how do you do that? How do you fund that? How do you find the right people? It's tough. Yeah.
Are there cities that are better at it that you would point to as, well, if you want to see a model, not perfect by any stretch, but a city that's definitely heading in the right direction, where would you go?
Yeah, I mean, you've got cities like Songdo, which is just outside of Seoul in South Korea, that were built from the ground up with technology. But what's interesting to me is places like Barcelona that put in smart light technology, parking meter technology, and whatever, have generated like over 40,000 jobs over the past sort of 10, 15 years, and have managed to really implement technology in a very smart way. Also, New York does some amazing things. It's turned its public phone network into a public Wi-Fi network.
All right.
It's got applications. It's got all sorts of sensors in the city that actually work for the citizens. So these small applications can work very, very well, but you have to back that up with the people with the skill set behind it.
There's DiBaggio in New York is starting to brag a little about decreasing crime numbers.
Yeah.
Could that be a consequence of the smartness that his city has taken?
Yeah, absolutely. In New York City, there's actually microphones that can tell if a gunshot's gone off. There's all sorts of things that are really, really smart. But it's also, like you say, use the word insidious, and it's a little bit...
you said creepy, I said insidious, and in many ways they're both, aren't they?
If suddenly I'm in the Bronx in New York City, which is actually a fantastic place, I raise my voice and someone else raises we have an argument, does a cop car turn up because some microphones have, some longer range microphones have picked up the conversation? This gets really, really... complicated.
All right, I need to take a break for the news. We're only 2 predictions into the 5 for 2019, combined, of course, with the questions. Our guest is Futurist Nikolas Badminton. Welcome back to Vancouver Consumer this Saturday afternoon. Sterling Fox in studio with Futurist Nick Badminton, who's just in the middle of his 5 predictions and questions for 2019. Prediction number 1, there will be increasing tension between technology giants and governments. Prediction number 2, smart cities will lead to citizen assimilation, acceleration will continue, and city administrations are not ready. So here's prediction number 3 of the 5. And for your comment, because you have a question that you attach to every prediction, Nick. So here's the prediction. You hit me with the question. Number 3, economic protectionism will be rife, and the great global AI ethics debates will begin.
Yeah, so how will country-level policy and economic planning react to and adjust to automation at scale and deployment of technologies, artificial intelligence, such like, that fully robotize algorithmic human work? So this is about removing humans from tasks that can be done easily by machines. So
something that's been happening all of our lifetimes,
yes,
and yet it now seems to be it seems to have changed gears, and it's happening at a greater speed.
Because it can now do intellectual work. So, for example, JP Morgan rolled out a system called Coin. It was a couple of years ago, and Coin could actually process corporate agreements at scale, and it did. It was like 380,000 man hours of work in about 4 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah, because lawyers they follow rules, administrators they follow rules. Artificial intelligence can do all of it at scale.
Right.
Done.
Right. Now, and economic protectionism will be rife was the first part of prediction number 3. We see it, of course, in the Trump administration next door, and we're starting to see more of it around the world. So you're predicting that it will intensify as 2019 unfolds.
Yeah. So the people that run countries they control the pace of the country in terms of its development, especially with technology. This kind of technology is going to come in, and it's going to start to decimate things like people that drive trucks, self-driving trucks, and taxis, self-driving taxis, municipal transportation, people that work in retail, people that work in banking. All of these jobs, they're quite a significant amount of jobs,
sure,
are going to be affected. But I talk about a future which is about human and the machine. I truly believe that our wisdom and the way that we operate with our creativity, and we can apply that to problems and situations, is incredibly important. Now, what organizations need to do is actually choose to have a human as part of the solution, and this is what governments are going to try and work out.
Right. Now, we see, for example, on the consumer level, we see, for example, as something as simple as getting your groceries.
Yes.
Now they've reduced the number of live people in the store.
Yes.
They want you to go to one of those self-checkout machines. Mm-hmm. And now the technology is already at play in many supermarkets, especially in the States, where as you go along, you simply scan each item that you put into your basket, and by the time you get to the front to leave, it's already tallied up, and you scan your phone and it's done.
Yeah, and you've even got stores like Amazon Go down in Seattle that have got cameras in the roof. They use RFID, pressure sensored shelves, and you can walk in, you can put whatever in your bag. At least if you've scanned your application, you just walk out. Mm-hmm. And they call it just walk out technology.
That's right.
And it uses sensor fusion. And what's really interesting about that, the facial recognition and everything, it brings the offline data capture in line with the online data capture, and Amazon becomes even bigger and stronger, right?
Well, you see, that's a lot of people would see that as the downside, but it's inevitable.
The Amazon Go technology and people like Walmart and Microsoft are working together to roll out very similar technologies is going to completely revolutionize grocery shopping at scale and other kinds of shopping at scale as well.
And those who simply resist, who refuse to go to a self-checkout, I'm gonna get my money and hand it over to a human being. They may keep a line in the supermarket open for you, but they're ignoring your protests.
What quality conversations do you have with cashiers in supermarkets?
Okay. Prediction number 4. Many of us are too busy reading the trashy mags.
Well, that's right, huh?
Prediction number 4. Yeah. The reinvention of education starts, and the talent pooling from 5th grade and even earlier will begin. Yeah, we're going to allow and encourage large, powerful companies, banking, technology companies, whatever, to recruit our children earlier and earlier to ensure them a prosperous future. Will we let these companies step in? This is really interesting. I think that the education system has been broken for decades, and it doesn't work for everyone. And people are trying to work out how do we ensure that our children are educated in the right way, and how are they going to be ready for the world? I mean, one stat that's been flying around for the past few years is like 65% of jobs that kids will do in the future don't exist today. I don't know if that's exactly true as a statistic, but the future is going to be very different. I actually dropped out of school. It didn't work for me. I actually then went away, did some work, then went back to college and focused in on something I really wanted. Right, exactly.
The syllabus, and I've chatted to a lot of ministries across Canada and down in the States as well about education systems. And we're just not, it's just not working. You know, learn how to read, learn how to write, learn trigonometry and mathematics and now, sure. But then why aren't we teaching our kids creative problem solving, how to be entrepreneurs, how to like balance, you know, their business accounts and how to be entrepreneurs? That's where we need to be going. And what's going to happen is the talent, companies like Google, companies like Facebook, whoever, they need to hire hundreds of people every week so that they can grow and so they can do more in the world. And what they're going to do is they're going to find the kids and they're going to have academies and they're going to bring them straight in.
So there's this whole notion that you're talking about, the talent pooling of kids from fifth grade or even earlier, will begin as companies. And it's not like in a communist country back in the old Soviet Union. You know, when you were in grade 5, you will be a construction worker, and that's it. There's no choice. The state has decided on your behalf that your career will be this.
Yeah. So
it's not that kind of thing.
No, but what's going to happen is there's going to be a family. Their daughter Maria is 13. She shows a huge aptitude around data and robotics and whatever at school because they do that now.
Right, sure.
And Google pay her $20,000 a year to finish school. At the age of 16, it comes into their, you know, higher education academy and she works for Google.
Ah, okay. Here's prediction number 5. And this is really interesting. We've already talked about this before we even got on the radio because this is a pet topic of mine. Prediction number 5. The fight for Africa will heat up.
Yeah, it sure will. Will China or America win the battle for natural resources, water supply, global energy, and how will big technology companies capture the next billion platform users? These are the goals. What's really interesting, I was looking up a stat earlier.
And you were just in Africa, literally a few days ago. You were in North Africa and Morocco, literally a few days ago.
I was there on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's wild. It's a wild frontier out there. But
Nick, over the last couple of years, we have watched China aggressively, very, very aggressively, try literally to buy Africa.
So there's some reasons behind this. So if we just look at some stats here, there's 1.2 billion people in Africa, right? Very, very smart people. Over 1,000 languages are spoken there. So it's a cultural hub as well. And Africa's land area exceeds that of China, Europe, and the USA combined, which basically, you look at that, you know, the Democratic Republic of Congo, places like that, these are resource-rich countries. Africa, abundant sunshine, abundant natural resources, right? And what's really interesting is China and America have been buying up swathes of land. And why have they been buying it? They've been buying that for agricultural purposes, natural resources, and more importantly, water.
Yes.
Water is going to be one of the biggest traded commodities over the next 20 to 25 years. Michael Burry, the guy that did The Big Short, right? 2007, 2008.
Right.
His focus now is buying up the ability to have access to aquifer.
Ah,
it's pretty wild. If you actually look at Africa, it's the fastest growing middle class in the world. So if we know that there's a huge economic opportunity there for any company that can enable those people to do more, build more business. And if you've ever sat down with African business leaders or political leaders, their drive is incredible. They're so smart, so driven, you know. And
yet I think typically, Nick, a North American reaction to Africa would be it's a kind of a backward place full of people with, you know, great potential, but unfortunately almost zero education and therefore not a lot of future.
It's almost
that's a typical North American reaction, isn't it? It's kind of a backward place, you know.
This really gets big tech companies excited, right?
Yeah.
Because, hey, you know what? We can enable these kids to be something more. We can provide them with the tools and the platforms. We can provide them with everything they need. And suddenly, you know, and you've got an entire, you know, population of a continent that's sort of plugged in. The World Bank does tons of work out of Kenya and Ghana. The USA is really screwing up right now because of international policy. They're kind of ignoring Africa, which is a ridiculous thing. China has been going in deep on Africa for a long time.
Very long.
And they're building infrastructure and they're paying for it, and it's really benefiting, you know, Africa as a whole. But they want to own. They want to own the people. They want to own the resources. They want to own the ability that country is going to give to the world. Second to that, India. But like, you know, Africa, India, like 4 billion people, I think, globally. I think.
But if you, I suppose the risk for a country rather like China is investing untold trillions in essentially buying Africa to suit their own agenda down the road.
Of course.
But then, we've seen this. Colonial powers don't necessarily end well in countries that they occupy, no matter how generously. Inevitably, some locals are going to go, we don't really need the Chinese around here. This is our country. Yeah. We'd really prefer to do it our way.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of communism in Africa as well.
Yeah.
I mean, China's kind of a new communism. Some would argue that there's a lot of countries, Ethiopia, for example, there's
already sort of in that vein anyway.
Yeah. Who are you going to partner with? You're going to partner with someone that truly believes it's got a long stream of money that can help you. You're going to try and you're going to try and level up the country in the best way possible. I think Africa is fascinating. It's wild.
And so the rest of us ignore them at our peril.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about money because you keep mentioning money.
Yes.
And one of the things that is on your website, it's NikolasBadminton.com, by the way, friends, if you want to check out Nick's work and some more of his predictions and that sort of thing. But one of the things, now we've been talking about this here in Canada for a long time, but the whole notion of a cashless society, we're really moving again much more rapidly towards that in the last couple of years than we have. We've been talking about it for 10, 15 years, Nick, but we've really zoomed or accelerated the pace in the last 2, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, many people don't even walk around with cash in their pockets. If you look at places like Norway and Sweden, whatever, it's almost impossible to do anything with money. I had a friend in Norway actually try. Someone gave him like 3,000 euros, and he said he went into the bank and tried to pay it into his bank account and couldn't because that branch wasn't actually set up to handle money.
Really?
That's going to be a future. It's really interesting. I actually did a presentation.
That's a bit baffling to a Canadian ear at this point. A bank branch that is actually not ready to take your money.
I was in a bank branch in London just a week and a half ago, and I didn't know where to sit. And then I sat down. I was chatting to like the bank manager that was sat at some sort of. It was like a co-working space in the corner. I was completely bemused, and they're like, "Oh yeah," blah blah blah. I'm like, this is wild, like a complete change in banking. So a cashless society, how inevitable is it? I think it is going to be hugely inevitable. I think inevitable from the fact that, we'll be using our mobile phones.
Sure. And you see that more, Apple Pay and all of that sort of thing. Sure.
And, you go to Europe and you go to China, things like WePay, Apple Pay, Alipay, whatever, it's everywhere. You do have, there's still a lot of people that do use cash down in the States. And I did some research on this early in the year, actually presented it in Las Vegas, in the middle of the year last year, to a bunch of business owners. And, American millennials are spending cash. 80% of the money that they spend is in cash.
Okay.
Why? Because they work, they get paid in cash, they bypass the tax man, and they pay for services in cash.
Right.
So there's this sort of underground society, and there's all sorts of there's all sorts of people that are fighting against the cashless society. I think it's in Norway. There's an organisation that's saying we still need cash and whatever, it gives us power and whatever, and they're not wrong, because cash has been used to bypass, taxation and a whole bunch of other sort of formal ways of managing money.
We're almost out of time, but I need you to go just one step beyond money and talk a little bit about cryptocurrency, because this is already the money replacement for a few.
Yeah, no.
I would say a baffled few, but nonetheless, there are some devotees.
It doesn't replace money. And that upsets a lot of people that I know that work in crypto. I mean,
Bitcoin or whatever.
Bitcoin, right? Ethereum, whatever. I own crypto. I just want to understand how it works as a platform. I think it's really interesting technology. I think that having currency that can be traded in a way like cryptocurrency can be useful. I've actually got a friend that put $20,000 in and took out $4.6 million and bought a hotel in Florida.
Oh my!
But he knew that the troubles were coming.
Right.
Bitcoin got so big that it can no longer be used to buy anything.
Right.
Whereas in the early days of Bitcoin, you could literally go to places like Berlin or even places in Vancouver and you could spend your Bitcoin because it was kind of like currency. And now it's just inflated into something that's, a pump and dump kind of investment fund.
Interesting stuff. Nikolas Badminton, friends.